If you spend any amount of time online where they talk about running shoes, you've probably seen the photos and the videos of pretty catastrophic looking wear in the heel area of a Vaporfly 3, especially in this area. Now, for me personally, as a forefoot runner, I've been having very good durability, if not better durability in the Vaporfly 3s than I ever did in the Next Percent 1 or 2. But I do see those photos pop up time and time again of pretty catastrophic wear in the heel area of the Vaporfly 3. So it got me wondering, is there a larger issue here? Is this a bigger problem, or is this a very isolated subset of users that are having a very specific type of problem? So I asked my subscribers to send me photos of the outsoles of their Vaporfly 3s. I got 7 responses, and in those 7 responses, I got pretty much what I was expecting to see as far as the number of problems. And I got one photo that had a very clear result of that heel failure, but even better, it showed exactly why. Now, Nike has always been very clear that the Vaporfly is a race shoe. In fact, it is the top of the line performance race shoe. It's the elite level race shoe. The shoe is made for performance. It is not made for durability. And in the early days of the Vaporfly, Nike was very clear saying that you're going to get 1 or 2 races, marathons out of the Vaporfly. Nowadays, they're saying 100, 150 miles or so of racing, and then maybe another 100, 150 of training, which corresponds to what I get out of Vaporflies as well. Nike's never put that in writing, but that's just sort of what's implied out there in social media and stuff from official Nike channels. Now, again, remember, the Vaporfly is a race shoe. It's a performance race shoe. It is a stripped down race shoe that's making a lot of sacrifices for durability in performance. So it is not a daily trainer. A shoe that is starting to wear after, 50, 60, 70K, yes, that's bad, especially for an expensive shoe. But again, for a performance race shoe, I can live with it. It's sort of, you know what you're getting when you buy the shoe. That being said, though, the Vaporfly outsole has always been a bit of an issue. Now, if we look at the 3 outsoles that we had across the 4 versions of the Vaporfly, we have the Vaporfly 4% outsole, we have the Vaporfly Next Percent version 1 and 2, it was the same outsole, and then we have the Vaporfly 3 outsole. So if any of you ran in the Vaporfly 4%, you remember just how dismal the wear was on this outsole. In fact, I'm sure all of us who ran in it can remember the first time we went out and ran in that shoe. We were excited to go run in that shoe. Maybe we, went out for a 10K because we're just super excited about it. The shoe felt amazing, but when we got home and looked at the outsole, especially the heel, it looked like we just ran 200 miles because the shoe was just torn up. The Vaporfly 4%, especially the heel, had such dismal wear and durability. It was almost laughable. There were a lot of design issues with as to why. The biggest one being that the rubber areas, the black areas that you see on the 4% there, were actually designed to be flush with the ZoomX foam, but based on manufacturing and tolerances, sometimes they'd be recessed from the foam. So the white area of the foam in the midfoot and the heel would actually hit the ground first before the rubber did, especially in the heel area. Those 4 heel pads that you see in the Vaporfly 4% heel were definitely recessed. So you would just tear this shoe up. And the ZoomX we had in 2017, 2018 was not as durable as the ZoomX that we have now in 2023, as I said. So the 4% never had great durability, especially in the outsole. So moving to the next percent, Nike, I think, made some significant improvements here, especially in the forefoot. We got a much thicker piece of rubber that was now mounted on the foam, so it wasn't flush with the foam. So there was a sort of a ridge between the rubber and the foam, so that ridge actually protected the midfoot rubber or the midfoot foam quite a bit on the Next Percent. The heel still had issues. It was a much better heel, but as you can see, those 2 rubber pads that were in the back, they didn't offer much protection. So heel strikers especially tore up the heel on the Next Percent. It was really bad, especially that you can see there's a huge chunk of exposed foam behind those rubber pads. Heavy heel strikers that were really leveraging sort of the bevel in the heel were really tearing that up. But in the forefoot, it was, I think, a much better piece of rubber. It could feel a little slappy at times because it was a very thick and stiff piece of rubber. But overall, I think the next percent was a step forward from the 4%. So getting to the Vaporfly 3, I think Nike has spent a lot of time to try to really maximize durability here. In the forefoot piece of rubber, we have a much more flexible, thinner piece of rubber that has waffles. The waffles give much better shock absorption for a thinner piece of rubber, and they give much better grip. Plus, between the waffles, you can see all the holes that are cut into the outsole piece of rubber, which give much more flexibility and compliance to the ground. So overall, the Vaporfly 3 and the forefoot has much better grip. And as I said, the rubber, because of the compliance, I think it's a better rubber. I also think has better durability. Again, as a forefoot runner, I'm getting much better durability there. Moving to the midfoot in the heel, you can see that Nike's added a lot more rubber in the heel in order to make it better for heel strikers, to give them more area where they're landing on rubber and not exposed foam. And I think overall that's done really well. If you look at the outsole or the midsole design of the Vaporfly 3, you see that there's sort of this 3D printed CNC milled aesthetic across that. I don't think that's completely aesthetic. I think that's there to help channel some of the forces on foot strike and landing specifically. I think it's done really well. In fact, I have a whole video on the technical and design aspects of the midsole, specifically on the Vaporfly 3. I'll put a link in the description to that if you want to go really deep into that. I've already done a ton of content around this, but I think these sort of tiers or terraces, and you can see that especially when on the outsole, are really here to help channel a lot of the forces and energy that runners are, putting into the ground through the foot strike when their shoe hits the ground. But I think those terraces are actually what's causing some of the issues here. So let me get into the photos that my subscribers sent showing their midsole and outsole wear. Now, the first one we're looking at is Yuri Grigori. He's a forefoot striker, and he's got two pairs of Vaporfly 3s. The white lime color one, the one you see on the left, has about 100 kilometers or 62 miles on it. And Yuri said that he's only really used this for speed workouts, mostly track, a little asphalt, and some crushed stone, white stone area, which I would think is sort of a crushed track type material or a really packed path. But at 62 miles or 100K, I'm not seeing a ton of wear there. Again, forefoot striker, really not wearing the shoe significantly. The pink pair, the hyper pink pair, he said has 50 kilometers or 31 miles, and he's used that exclusively for racing. From the looks of the outsole, it looks like it's road racing because that looks like asphalt kind of buildup on the actual exposed hyper pink area of the outsole. But again, forefoot striker here, you're not seeing a ton of wear. Moving to my shoes, again, I'm a forefoot striker. I'm also not seeing a lot of wear. Now, in the forefoot pad on the right shoe, I do get a lot of wear on the lateral edge of the forefoot rubber pad. Basically, I'm wearing off the waffles there. That is always a place that I get really high wear on my shoes because I tend to scuff my right foot when I'm landing. I kick it forward a little bit, especially when I'm fatigued. And I've done a lot of long runs in this shoe. So this pair of Vaporfly 3s has 145 miles or about 233 kilometers on it. And I've been using it mostly for long runs recently. So I do have some wear on the rubber on the lateral side of the forefoot of my right shoe. You're seeing on the toe off area, I'm getting a little wear on toe off right where my big toe is. That's not unique to Vaporflies. In fact, that's not even unique to Nike shoes. I think I get that on every Nike shoe. And that just has to do with how thin the toe off area is on Nike shoes. One thing that I am seeing, and you can see this on the photo on the left, is that all of those terraces, I'm getting all of the paint, all of the coating on the ZoomX foam is being worn off. But you can see there's no wear on the heel pads because I am touching my heel on my foot strike, though I'm landing forefoot. My heel does touch the ground. I think midfoot touches the ground more, especially when I'm going very fast. But this kind of wear of the paint rubbing off Zoom X, I've seen this before in other Zoom X shoes. I've had other Next Percents that did this. My pair of Alpha Flies, I had a pair that was the release pair that had kind of the neon green coating on the Zoom X. It wore off in the same sort of pattern. So this wear is not necessarily unique to me, but it does come from me scuffing my feet forward a little bit on landing. And we'll come back to that because I think that's an important point. So moving to midfoot strikers, the first one that sent me something is Tim Grose. Now, Tim Grose is a fellow YouTuber, shoe tuber. He's been around for a long time. If you don't subscribe to Tim, definitely go subscribe to Tim. He's one of my favorite YouTubers. But he does a ton of content. He's done a ton of content around comparing all of the Vaporflies on, you know, workouts and feel and wear and how they fit his foot. He has very narrow, very big and narrow feet. Again, if you don't subscribe to Tim, go subscribe to Tim. He makes great content. But he sent these over and he said they have 73 miles or about 117 kilometers on them. Now, Tim is a midfoot striker who leans more towards forefoot landings when he's going fast. And I've seen Tim in his videos run in these shoes, and he's run mostly on the road, but I do remember seeing some kind of packed path, you know, dirt path running done in these shoes. And I know he's done some track work in these shoes. But again, Tim sent this photo over and he said that they really just need a bit of a cleanup, really, and they're ready to go. And I agree. I'm not seeing any significant wear here. You can see around the heel pads on the lateral edge, there is a little sort of the paint's coming off the foam around the edge of the rubber pads on the tiers that you see in the outsole. Similar to mine. Mine is much more extreme, but it's mostly cosmetic. And again, for a midfoot striker, I think this is very minimal wear. Next one to look at is another YouTuber named the Inconsequential Runner. He does great training and coaching content. Go check him out. He's got a growing channel. But he sent these over, and these only have 18 miles or about 30K on them. But he sent these over to kind of highlight two things that you can see on the toe-off area. He's getting wear in the rubber, which I get. Again, I get that on pretty much every shoe, every Nike shoe at least. And he's getting a little sort of discoloration and wear around the lateral rubber pad on the heel. And he said that he generally burns through the lateral left heel of his shoes, just like I burn through the lateral right forefoot of my shoes. So again, this is only 18 miles or 30K, not a lot of wear here, but again, this is better than I would expect to see even at 18 miles. So it's really interesting to see this. Another midfoot striker is Dylan, who sent these photos over to me. Now, Dylan is a elite high school runner from Las Vegas, Nevada, and he participates in one of the fastest clubs in the state. And he said that these shoes have about 100 miles or 160 kilometers on them, and he's a midfoot striker. He's done mainly road running with about 30 miles or 48 kilometers of track workouts in these shoes. And specifically, he did one 5K race off-road in these that he said the majority of the damage that he can see in these really come from that one race. Now, given that it's Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm imagining it's California cross country, which means it's very packed dirt, probably some harder surface, maybe a little grass in there. So, you know, we're not talking trail running here, but we are talking about a mixed surface. But again, for 100 miles, for someone who's running quite fast, these shoes are showing wear, and you can see, again, we're getting a little torn up stuff around the terraces in the heel area. But again, for 100 miles, for a shoe that's been used for racing, I'm not necessarily surprised by this, because a Next Percent 1 or 2 would have done this, and a Next Percent Vaporfly 4% would have been torn up even worse than this. Now, moving to heel strikers, Tim Grose sent this one over to me as well. This is Joseph Gonzalez, one of Tim's friends and running club mates that he runs with, sent this over, and this was the photo that I think you've seen this type of photo in a lot of places about Vaporfly 3 wear, especially this catastrophic heel wear. And this specifically was probably the best photo that I've seen of it. Now, Tim said that Joseph posted this in one of the running groups. And he said that this was done, less than 50 miles or 80 kilometers. Now, obviously, Joseph also is a heel striker here, so you can clearly see that there is a lot of damage in this shoe. Now, that photo was probably one of the best photos I've seen of this problem in the heel. And it really clearly showed me what I think actually is causing all of this. So in this illustration that I put together, very low res illustration, I'm trying to illustrate what's actually happening when a heel striker is landing on the ground. So the blue part of this is the midsole, the red part of it is the rubber heel pads on the Vaporfly, the yellow is the upper, and the gray is the ground. Now when you're running on any surface, mostly asphalt or I would say crushed dirt, it's an irregular surface, but also track and concrete would have the same irregularities. Now, what I think is actually happening here is when a heel striker is landing on the ground, the rubber pad is obviously what's hitting the ground first, but those terraces that we've seen on the outsole of the Vaporfly 3% are actually gripping into the ground. So if you are a heel striker who is scuffing your foot forward just a little bit on landing, you're actually causing a little bit of shear force to come across into the midsole, which is actually shearing the rubber pad off of the heel. And if we go back and look at Joseph's photo again, and we zoom in and look at the specific exposed foam that was under that rubber pad, you can even see the micro tears in the foam from the shearing off of the piece of rubber from that sort of impact on the ground. In fact, the zoomed in area that I'm showing on the screen, you can see those tears. They run perpendicular to the center line of the shoe, so that they're at a 90-degree angle. You can see that all across that area where the foam was actually just ripped off the outsole altogether. Now, this is very clear that that sort of scuffing forward of your foot landing, even if it's a very subtle movement, if you don't have a crisp sort of down and out or down and up foot strike, none of us always have that foot strike. We're always inevitably, kind of scuffing our foot forward a little bit, some worse on one foot or the other. Those terraces that you see in the outsole are really catching the ground, and it's creating a lot of shear force, which is ultimately going to shear off those rubber pads. Now, Nike has an extensive wear testing program, and they must have seen this problem in wear testing before the shoe was released. Now, my guess is that the performance gains of having those terraces and how they control the energy, again, we're talking marginal gains, but in a performance racing shoe, marginal gains all matter. So I assume that Nike saw the performance gains from the terraces, and then they probably saw some of the durability concerns for very specific types of runners with very specific types of foot strikes. And they decided that the performance gains are better for a racing shoe. Now, if this was a daily trainer, I'm sure they would have rethought it because you need more durability in a daily trainer. But for a racing shoe, I think they decided performance is going to outweigh durability here. And Nike's great warranty program can take care of anyone who is having that catastrophic failure. So I'm assuming that's what Nike decided to do. Now, moving forward, we are going to see a Next Percent 4. And knowing that the Next Percent 4 is generally probably going to be a new upper, but it's going to be same midsole, same outsole. So I don't necessarily expect Nike to address this in any direct way. I don't think there's a redesign. I don't think this is a design flaw that requires a complete rethink of this shoe, especially in the outsole. But there are a couple things Nike could do to rectify this in the Next Percent or the Vaporfly 4 that will come out after this shoe, probably sometime next year or early the year after. Now, the first one would be to take all of these terraces and really this entire heel area of the shoe and smooth it all out. Make it look much more like the Next Percent 1 or 2. That would require significant retooling of all the molds for this shoe, probably some retooling of the rest of the heel area of the shoe. Much more of an investment than I think Nike's going to do for the fourth version of the shoe, or for the updated version of the Vaporfly 3. So I would not expect that. And frankly, if they didn't do it already for the Vaporfly 3 on release, I don't think you're going to see it in the Vaporfly 4. The second thing they could do is coat this area or coat the entire heel area with a material similar to what they've done on the Ultrafly to protect the ZoomX foam from trail running. But that's probably going to add some weight to the shoe, which you don't necessarily want to do or need to do in a racing shoe, a road racing shoe. And it's probably going to change the feel a bit back here. So I also don't expect them to necessarily do that, though that would, I think, help some of the problems. It's not going to totally get rid of it, though. And then the final thing is really to take these heel pads, the rubber patches only, and retool the mold for these rubber patches and make them completely smooth. Now, that I think is something that wouldn't be too costly because you're only talking about these two little pieces that need to be retooled to make them smooth. But if you smoothed out these rubber pads, it's really going to stop a lot of that shear force that's happening because these terraces, again, these terraces are catching the ground. So if these rubber pads are smooth, you're not going to sacrifice much grip back there. I think the marginal gains of this terrace design, you're still going to get it in the outsole. It's just going to get rid of all the possibility of shearing from that sort of stuffing your foot forward with heel striking if you have a smooth heel pad. Let me know in the comments how the wear is for your Vaporfly 3s. Are you seeing similar problems? What type of wear are you seeing? I always love the discussion down there. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like this type of in-depth running shoe content, consider subscribing. You'll see more content like this pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps more people see this content and this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.